All right. Well, thanks, Todd, and most importantly, thanks for having us here. It's great to get started. I'm gonna share my screen a second. All right. So as Brad has quickly anticipated, we're calling this kind of formal interaction Claris Corner, and today we're here with you to have an additional opportunity to engage with our developers, really. But before I get started, standard housekeeping about disclaimer. What we're gonna share today, information provided in the session, is for informational purposes only. It's not a binding commitment by Claris. This presentation and any related material of the strategy, development, release, and timing of any Claris product, features, or functionality remains in the sole discretion of Claris International, Inc. and is subject to change for any reason without notice. So I'm gonna now get past the robotic legal disclaimer and get into a little bit more human interaction. So again, I'm Giuliano Iacobelli. I work with the product team, and today we really try to experiment for the first time with Claris Corner, which takes me to the second disclaimer. Yes, we got another one, more informal, but the two key takeaway is that Claris Corner right now is an experiment. We wanted to see if we could create more opportunities to connect with developers and share early and more frequently what is being built and exchange ideas. And most importantly, this is the very first time, so I will try to not look nervous, but with the CEO in the room, you can imagine that it makes it a little bit more tricky. Not to mention that I'm nervous all the time at a public presentation, but that's for another story. So besides, the point of Claris Corner was, okay, how we can find additional venues and places where we can exchange ideas, again, share earlier, more frequent this being built in a setup that is not gigantic, because we have other opportunities to share roadmap. Some of you might have been attending the most recent one on November 16. There is some opportunity to do Q&A there, but the format and the scale of that makes it a little bit more different. So this is how we're trying to why we're trying to do this, and I think it's good to have additional opportunities to connect with developers. What I'm going to share today is basically the idea of Claris Corner is to have very short demos of something we've been building, and then have some conversation about it. You can ask questions, or you can share maybe other situation where you've been dealing with similar problems, or pretty much anything, and I will try to answer to the best of my knowledge, or to the extent that I can answer all the questions. But again, I like that to be super informal. This is everything but a monologue, so feel free to ask questions or stop me anytime. And really, what I would like to share today is the data collection app demo. So if some of you have been attending the November 16 session that was hosted by Robert Halsey jointly with Peter Nelson, you might be familiar with part of that already. But I think even if you are, here you have a different second opportunity to engage with question and conversation. So that's the whole point. Any question before I quickly hop on a demo, or? All right. Okay. So as you may be aware, we're working on the quote unquote new stuff, as Peter called it during the Engage Beyond keynote, and some of these earliest efforts that now have been focused on allowing to build application design for the web with web technologies that can be altered from the web, as something that can basically cover a scenario that today is quite more painful to tackle with FileMaker. So what I'm going to show you today is what do we have built so far in terms of experimenting and exploring ways to support this scenario in a development environment that lives within a browser and allows you to create an app starting from the front end with a visual development editor, which doesn't necessarily start defining the schema. So I'm in a brand new app, which was empty until a second ago. And when you get started, it gives you a boilerplate to get started for some data collection scaffolding or template, which is a two-step process of an app that assumes that as a starting point could allow you to do some registration. Like imagine something like, I don't know, a summer camp as an example. You can edit pages and get into that, so you get a little bit more closer to an actual development, to the actual development environment. And you see that there are some differences that will be pretty evident super quickly right now. There is an underlying grid system that is designed to move things away when you're editing that, and it's most important, it's also designed to be responsive. And we creating an object that would allow you to define the application starting from the UI with elements that already contain to some degree of logic. And we're starting with some early example of the most obvious data types that people might be need to work with when creating forms, really, where we're starting from. So you can fields that are designed to capture phone numbers, or field designed to capture emails, email addresses, or let's say longer text area. And you can see that the more I add, the more I can have a say about how do I want those items to be displayed. So let's say that I want to date here after the first name and last name. Okay. Fields comes with ability to have settings. So let's say that we want to make sure that email is going to be here. So you'll have the chance to make those required, and you can basically keep going. Right now, we're starting with some essential set of fields to explore this one. And so let's assume that now most of this reflects what we wanted to have. You can also get a sense of how that would look like and perform for the end user by going into preview mode, so you can get a sense, okay, how does this react when the layout changes, or what happens when let's say I have something like this, but then I started having long text here, and that's the scheme being adjusted automatically, things as such. The field types we have here also are designed in a way that can save time when it comes to for formatting or things like that, or validator for email. So if we go about something like this, the validator is built in. Date pickers behave like you would have expected, and basically we're working to, on one side, building a broader portfolio of items and of course elements that would give you more support in terms depending on what you're building, and as well as how the form perform when it's actually deployed and being used with your end user. The main use case that we're looking at here, most importantly, I think I might have skipped that, is collecting data from the web to anonymous guest users, which is something that comes with a little bit of friction in the current tool set that Claris has to offer. So that I wanted to quickly go over some of the elements that you have seen here that covers, as you can imagine, and see a grid system, degree of responsiveness, pre-built fields with behavior that aim to avoid to reinvent the wheel as much as possible every time. And this, of course, will be eventually growing, and we'll iterate and build on top of that as the more we're gonna get our feedback and get access to these early versions of the tools earlier. And again, this is intended to be something that expand the use cases that our developers can tackle with FileMaker, especially when it comes to web, where we know that today it comes with shortcomings. WebDirect is used for a lot of stuff, but it's still predominantly designed to mirror and mimic the experience of a desktop client, which necessarily doesn't come with all the construct and support that web application today would expect to have when it comes to how DOM is created and HTML is formatted. So this is a very quick demo. I don't want to take too much time going over. I'm happy to keep this up as we're chatting. I really would like to over-index as much as possible to see what are the reaction in the room, if you have questions, or what are the maybe most recent areas where you have to face this use case. How did you do that? Things as such.
So one of the biggest issues that we've run into in the past when using your tool is it's not accessible on the web. And as a university, we have to make things web compliant. So we've been limited with using the application for that reason.
Got it. And how are you solving that problem today? You do custom development, custom front-end development, and then, or are you using other tools?
We actually brought in Cross IT to actually facilitate building products to work around that.
Got it.
So, hey, I'll jump in and I'll say I like the demo and I like the use case. The way, sitting here in New York, I look at the Claris as having an ecosystem, and I think that this looks like it fills. So Claris owns the desktop, is my point of view. They're massively strong on the desktop and maybe a little bit weak on the web. So this would fill a gap in the ecosystem. So I like it. And not a complete gap because the WebDirect is strong, but like you point out, the WebDirect makes web pages of a particular. They're not. I think it's called reactive, where they switch over to mobile or iPad. They just change as you just demonstrated. So it's complementary to WebDirect, I'd say.
Yeah, and some other problems we're trying to solve here, seeing is that it's also the scalability aspects of WebDirect, and especially when it comes to public scenarios, public-facing scenarios with anonymous guest users. There might be circumstances where you need to handle like peak of traffic that are unexpected and that is not regular, and there's also some challenges with that today you would have with the licensing structure that we do offer when it comes to, like, say, either to manage this scenario. So those are some additional items that we're looking at, right? It's of course the modern web feeling. Modern is a broad term; it could be a little bit overloaded, but it's also an actual and practical issue when it comes to scalability, and most importantly, building something that is designed with a stack and a set of technology that I'd say it's aligned with what people would expect in terms of look and feel and experience. And of course, what you're seeing here, it's still very early, but I'd rather show how we're progressing instead of waiting for anything to be perfect, which will be anyway. So.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the web stack, it's probably some sort of React or something similar on the front end. So you're curly brackets instead of angle brackets. So it's more performant, and you're getting away from Vaadin. So anyway, I like it.
Yeah, Eric has a question. Did you see a raised hand?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to do that. I really like this as a developer. It looks quick, clean, and I mean, form submission should be a lot easier with this too. I will be curious to see what happens with concurrencies when you guys decide on all that. But as far as this goes, I'm really excited about this.
Mm-hmm. What exactly would be your concern with concurrencies?
Mostly the price, honestly. When you have too many, once you get too many users in for concurrency, is the price
sure.
skyrocketing.
Okay, so that it's a licensing aspect, not a product or implementation one related. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way.
Sure. Anyone else? And Todd, I defer to you to any some form of time check. I want to make sure that we're already guests. Yeah. So we don't want to take any more time than it's actually.
I do have a question. Sorry, I missed the very beginning of your presentation. I came in when you were starting to drag things around. I just want to make sure I understand what it is you're showing. This is a companion product to build web-facing database pages. This is not replacing a future version of FileMaker. Is that correct? It's some sort of add-on.
Correct. Yeah, it's the right way of looking at it, is how we do allow our developers to tackle scenarios that today with the standard tool set that FileMaker has to offer are more cumbersome.
So where's the data? Is it still a FileMaker database then? This is just the front end?
You anticipated me by a second. I was just about to mention that. So the data right now is stored in a cloud hosted environment, which is what is also hosted by, which is also hosting the environment that we're seeing here. However, if I don't know if you had the chance to see the keynote that Peter and Brad presented in late August, but Peter was showing our plans to make sure that data can be leveraged and tapped into from both services, especially from FileMaker. So what we're looking at here right now, the data is technically stored in the cloud, but a FileMaker Pro, we're working on this in a way that FileMaker Pro can access this data through ESS with a new version of that we're looking at, so that this new multi-tenant backend infrastructure, which is what makes it scalable and cost efficient, it can be leveraged from both sides. But this is technically not I would say a FileMaker file in the traditional sense of the word right now. But it's more about the technical implementation aspect of that. An abstraction, if you go higher one level of abstraction, it's think of it as a way for you to create a native web part of your application that can funnel data either into your FileMaker applications or directly in a cloud hosted environment if you don't have a need to funnel the data somewhere else.
I have a question. Can you do it with FileMaker Go? Can you edit it, since it's primarily a web-based application, correct?
Potentially, but right now, we haven't explored any of that yet. Right now, we're looking at just as a pure. We're starting from a pure browser-based experience that can be consumed from browsers, but that it's one of the many things where we have on our radar. It all goes down to how much we want to prioritize a scenario versus another one. But like more than happy to hear more about it, and just to make sure that we just do not stare at the same screen. But feel free to, if you have any additional question or things that might take more time to address, please feel free to send it my way.
Todd, can you send all the email addresses of everyone so I can get them?
Yeah. I guess it looks like, Brad, did you have a comment or something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, thanks for give me a second. My point of emphasis is we're focusing the organization on our most important customers, and those are people who identify as Claris developers. What I talked about in the keynote, and people who earn their living, who spend their days in our platform, impact some multiple of users. So our aim is to be in contact with you, understand the problems you're trying to solve, build capabilities that make it easier for you to solve those problems ultimately, so we're delivering more value. So I guess my question or the feedback I'm looking for, is that coming through with you? This audience is exactly that, right? Most of you, almost all of you, live in our platform. You earn a living on it. You know it really well. And we have one future one I see there, so an 11-year-old. There have been concerns about where we're building these features. This is, out of every day, I feel like I hear a new prediction about the death of FileMaker. Like, we're trying not to think about it that way. We're trying to think about, what do you do? What are the hard problems you need to solve? How do we continue supporting that by building software that makes it easy to do that? So less a question on feedback about what Giuliano just showed, though you're welcome to speak to that, but more our approach, our method, the way we're deploying Agile, any feedback from the audience on that?
So
This is Kim. I just wanted to say that I am an in-house developer. So I do like this functionality because I don't always have time to do all the complicated stuff. And if you notice in the chat, I put that I use it for training purposes. So the fact that I could quickly build something, I like that aspect of it, where, you know, we team up with several different developers for our main business ERP. And I just wanted to comment saying that as I'm probably the only in-house developer on here, so I appreciate that. So
We love in-house developers too.
okay, thank you.
So I'll jump in, Brad, and say, after 20 years, it's really an amazing platform. And I've been at meetings where people say, "Oh no, we need more features," and sometimes I'll just say to the whole room, it's like, we're not even using all the features that are there. I think after 20 years, I'm not embarrassed to say that I'm still coming up with different ways to use the features in combination. In other words, to get if I take this feature and this feature, and you know, maybe it's the FMP URL protocol, maybe it's the text functions and the get selection, and I'm building, I wouldn't call them add-ons because that name is taken, but I'm building structures out of the components by putting together a couple of things, and I'm still coming up with new stuff after 20 years. It's like, you know, why didn't I figure this out a couple of years ago? So I think it's an amazing platform, and it's, you know, and I do primarily think of FileMaker, which owns not just the desktop but the LAN. You know, we do a little web direct, we do a little bit of the you know, the webifying through the various APIs that have been over the years. And I just add, it's an amazing ecosystem and all the different pieces you're putting together. So, you know, I'm a fan, and it's hard to keep up, but, you know, keep going.
Great. Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I think what I want to hear, not because I want you to lie to me, but because I want it to be true, is you know, that we're listening to the challenges you face. We're making investments that you know, that endear your continued loyalty to our platform. We're making investments that put the platform in a position to, you know, remain durable through the next, you know, decade or several decades. So if I get worried, it's a little bit about conspiracy theories or fears that we're taking things away, and we're not. And I know we're not because I'm in charge of it. But again, more important to me is that you hear that we're building that trust and confidence with Tony, you, and you know, more broadly, the community who live in the platform. So that's, you know, that's the goal. I don't really need a response to it, but if people have feedback to offer and it doesn't feel like we're accomplishing kind of those basics, then I want to know about it.
I have a question, but I'm not sure if this is the right time to ask it, but go ahead anyway.
Please.
So I come from primarily a industrial and graphic design background. So I am not, I'm a quasi, more like a little brother FileMaker developer, because I knew how to do very simple things, and I love creating layouts, and I use Adobe products all the time and whatever. One of my, for the last 10 years, one of my burning questions is, when can I start using more fonts than Arial and Times and whatever? I really, I mean, it's important to me, and I know I'm somewhat unique among FileMaker developers, is that I have 2 degrees in professional design from Carnegie Mellon and Art Center in Pasadena, and I love FileMaker. I love the way that it's intuitive, and when I can't figure something out, I call my friend Thomas and Teresa, and but it just frustrates me that typography is such an important part of design, and that's the only hurdle I can't get over. I mean, I try to do things in FileMaker that make sense in multiple different formats and screens, but I always have a design language that I want to adhere to, and that includes fonts. That includes,
Yeah, you build in
icons.
tricks to get it to look the way you want.
I
it to
build
look.
it visually. I don't care about the data. I care about the user interface and the presentation across Mac, PC, iPad, iPhone, and Android if it's being used as a web direct. So that's my basic question. When is web typography or something
That's a big issue with all the web-based applications. Is it's a programmer's mentality, and us designers have to sit back and try to make it work despite that. And there should be a bridge between the two, where you can have good visual interface, good usability, and have the functionality go into it as well.
Right. So I can do that. When I first started building these things, I used transparent ping images. So I would build entire Photoshop files full of the different menu items and titles and everything I needed in different typefaces and header typefaces. And so I'd have all these pings available. That adds to the overhead and massively, and plus you can't really search them unless you take the time to go in and put a tooltip or something. So it's,
I think FileMaker has some strengths and weaknesses, and Nick Goya out of Australia did 2 really good articles on fonts. And it is, I'll say it's a little bit limited in terms of getting cross-platform fonts. The best solution, for what it's worth, is certain fonts that have the same metrics. And Nick and the Goya team did a really terrific article that might be of some use. That all said, I think that I look at FileMaker as a platform like any other platform that has strengths and weaknesses. And, the reality is we just have to play to the strengths. But I enjoyed your presentation on fonts a few months ago. I think you did one.
Me? No, I did one on, well, I think, I was part of it, but yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't want to avoid any questions. So if the question was directed at me, I'm going to have to give kind of the typical disclaimer, like I can't tell you when features are coming out because
that's okay. I just wanted to make you aware of it.
That's I appreciate it. And Giuliano is
right
with product management, so he has that. I'm sure he would have a similar answer to mine, but maybe.
No, right. But I'm glad that this came up. I think one of the reasons why I was hoping that this engagement would generate is this sort of insight. I have no idea and able to tell what a solution might look like when it would come out as I'm sitting right now in this chair. But it's important to me to understand where you're coming from. Then whether or not they will be tackled from a broader customization ability perspective rather than being specifically narrowed to fonts, or maybe just adding more fonts to that I don't know. But understanding the why of that problem, it's very valuable for us. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, because so that tool, what you were demoing was a submission form with fields that a user would be, meant to fill out and then submit, and that data would then automatically get pulled into the data backend. Will there also be the ability to generate pages that are display only so that someone can submit their form and then they would, come back to them? So that if that's the goal.
Yeah, probably I would say, right? If you look about the amount of essential building blocks of a web app, that entails also that type of pages, not necessarily only pages to actually capture data. So this is just a starting point. So I don't want this audience to look at that they are creating a form builder. It's not. It's just that a web form is one specific use case that happens to be fairly recurring and that today cannot be addressed as easy as you could potentially will do with this additional tool. And that's just where we're starting from. But the sky's the limit.
It looks like John had a question or a comment.
Yeah, I guess, Todd, I just, stepping back and thinking more from the perspective of the business owner, right? If we look at Cross and even how we handled the FMburgh registration process, that kind of stuff, that data comes in through what, I don't know anymore these days, gravity forms or something like that. But that data is essentially useless to me, right? It stays out there in this website, and these guys know anytime I ask them to go develop something, it's always like, okay, well, I want it in FileMaker, or I want you to use Claris Connect or whatever. So, if this is a use case where I can go ahead and take that data and make it mean more to me and keep my developers in this ecosystem, then it means it means a lot more to me than if I've got to go out and use these other tools to go ahead and do it. Because my developers, first and foremost, Todd, Eric, all these guys, they're all FileMaker developers. And so that's, I want to try to keep them in that ecosystem because there's less resources for me to train them. We've got a better community here than we've got all the other places. So, I like what I'm seeing here. And like you said, from the perspective of the anonymous user or whatever, that's always some of the issues when I say, oh, well, let's build it in WebDirect. And then they look at me and they say, well, there's a lot easier ways to do this right now. So, I think I like overall what I see. And I just thought I'd provide that little bit of feedback.
Okay, I don't know, Todd, time check. I remember we kind of high level agreed on roughly half an hour. I want to make sure that we don't take too much time from the rest of the user group as it was planned. I'm more than happy to take more questions, not saying that at all, but so if the audience is enjoying the discussion, happy to take more, but I know that you had an agenda beyond our Claris Corner, so.
No, that's all right. The agenda I was part of that, and I'm very happy to give up my time right now for this, because I'll be around time. You guys are going to disappear.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, but one of my, I was going to say, which is just a comment. I've been developing a long time, like many of the people here. I've been developing for a very long time. So whenever I first cut my teeth on FileMaker, there were 8 functions, and couldn't do anything. Or I shouldn't say that, but it had a much smaller scale and a much easier learning curve. And now that it's such a mature product and can do, anything, that's what wife likes to say, just does anything. I'm not bothered, or I'm not, I don't see any kind of a negative from what you were presenting tonight as a 30-year developer. To me, it looks like something that could potentially be a very good addition to my toolbox, but also potentially an entry for younger developers who might look at FileMaker the way it is now and be somewhat intimidated, or at least after trying, after starting, kind of giving up because there's too many options, too many ways to do everything. I like what I'm seeing here. I like the idea of introducing somebody into FileMaker that way as well, even as just a supplemented product.
Absolutely, and it's other stuff that we're fully aware of. I mean, this web scenario not only addresses specific use cases, again, that in the FileMaker realm, today it's a little bit more challenging to accomplish, but give us the opportunity to create different entry points to user that might facilitate an onboarding experience that goes through a much less steep learning curve at the beginning. Not to mention that even just the step of downloading the client makes the whole first experience adds a little bit more friction in the steps that goes from visiting the website to decide to give it a try and actually get the product and install it. And for a lot of people that, let's say, are not familiar with Claris, so they're out there and they're exposed to all other tools that are that have a lot of emphasis on completely pure play web experience, their expectation of just clicking around in less than 30 seconds, being into the product, it's something that we need to be able to deal with and to account for. So this opens a lot of opportunities also to play with, to use that playbook a little bit to capture additional users, that's for sure.
Well, if I can make a comment directly to that, when you first open the product and you're prompted to make a new thing, and it comes up with a bunch of different things that you could create. There's like what, 6 of them? Maybe 6 or 8. You should have 200. You should have specific use things that you can build and that you can share fields and databases between them. I mean, get it set up so that someone can say, oh, okay, I want to build a product list, but I also want I also want this thing in it. So there's got to be a way to if you're talking about getting new users when they first buy the product, make it easier for them. Get tons of like Office templates.
I was thinking the same thing.
Or Adobe. Adobe's got hundreds of predefined templates, hundreds, not 8. So
yeah.
I was thinking some of the web page publishers, like I think Nice Page is one that comes to mind.
Or even Weebly, all the
they've got all these templates that you can use, and you can take pieces of them, bring them in together to create these pages that are dynamic, responsive, and you don't need to have a background in web publishing. You can take these basic tools and build.
Like just drag the gallery from
exactly.
Yeah,
and it's similar to what you just demoed earlier,
right.
Which, if you look at it objectively, it looks very simple and clean. And simplistic design is a good thing. Responsive design is a great thing. But having that back end that can take that data and you can do a lot with that, I mean, that's critical.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that involves like on the fly writing of pages of CSS code or whatever, but I mean, look at people like Weebly, companies like Weebly. Well, there's those companies are a dime a dozen, but what? There's 2 or 3 that Wix.com, Weebly. They have taken this modular approach to these pieces of information, and maybe, I mean, I'm not saying it's a new product, but you could certainly take those design cues and interface cues and meld them into your product development, including fonts, by the way.
Yeah, yes, of course.
So we're using a modular approach. We've got, just to pick one example, we've got a single file that replicates the structure of an email, which has related recipients, related attachments, and so forth and so on. So we have that file as a single file so that we can drop it into a client, and we have one Fortune 1000 customer with 3 divisions up and running. So we have modules, individual files that are very dedicated to particular purposes, whether it be security or a chat. We have a clone of Slack. You could do it for Salesforce. And those kinds of things could seed the market. And just a different topic, thinking about your demo. And I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, so I'll just excuse me for being a gringo.
No worries, no worries.
But I would say, mulling over the demo that you just provided, what I would say would make the most awesome demo that would highlight the FileMaker Claris ecosystem would be to take what you did, which was, a GUI build, fast build of a web page, type something in and have that data automatically show up in a FileMaker database, whether it's hosted in Cloud 2.0, whether it's hosted on AWS, or whether you passed it through the port onto a LAN, and then you basically would be showcasing the entire, well, not the entire, ecosystem. Just take what you did and then show how it plugs into existing infrastructure that's out there in the marketplace, or you know what I mean. So, and it could be Cloud 2.0, it could be whatever you want to highlight, but just have it show up in a FileMaker database. And I think that would have a wow factor and would address something that Brad said, because that you're doing past and future, that you're maintaining the whole stack or the whole ecosystem.
Right. Yep.
Hi, this is Kim. I just wanted to echo kind of what Tony's saying, because as an in-house developer, I have used, I'm a system admin, and I have used all kinds of different types of websites to create things to make it easy for our users. And not everything can be in FileMaker, and I do agree with like Salesforce, even if you want to say WordPress and things like that, because it has a block editor, to have this cloud-based type interface that is similar to all these other types, because it's real easy for someone like myself to go from different versions of these cloud-based things to see familiar items. So that's why I liked it too, because it was like, okay, this is what Salesforce does. Oh, this is what so-and-so does. So it makes your product more user-friendly for those that are not the hardcore developers.
Yep. And another interesting observation, I've sensed it here and there from this chat, but also from others, is something that I've been hearing about conversation about, okay, but if it's an experienced developer, if something is too, let's say, simplistic, it won't be of any value. But I don't believe that to be true. And I've seen often cases where still the balance between build versus, using a more simplistic tool, but that gets the job done. It's absolutely a viable option, even for someone who could completely code that thing himself with HTML and JavaScript. Right, so that it's an option for in many scenarios, not just so that even the fact that in some cases starting simple, it doesn't mean that it's designed for non-experienced user, because I believe that experienced user would be able to find opportunities to leverage something simpler anyway, depending of course of the business case.
So what you're really talking about is balancing complexity between a first-time user that wants to develop stuff and the complexity that's required by a professional developer such as you guys, right? So you're trying to, it's really, right? You're really trying to strike a balance between, how far you can go as a beginning user before you have to hire a developer.
Sort of. Oftentimes, those products designed in a way that, let's say, you can do 80% of whatever that form. Oh, sorry, with 20% of the effort, you can probably cover 80% of the forms that needs to be built. But then those platforms are designed in a way that can be open to more experienced people to do advanced customizations. And an example, and I'm not being prescriptive, don't take it as an actual suggestion for implementation, but the issue about the challenge about the font that you just presented could be either be addressed by you go in some setting panel and you have a much longer set of fonts that you can pick from, right? Or imagine if I give you a one line to add some to import your own CSS file that imports your form, and you just apply styling classes, and that automatically cascades across all the page. That's still solving the same problem, but for different users. So we need to understand how much this ability to go deeper into class specific or HTML DOM specific customization through CSS is applicable in the grand scheme of things. But is exactly what you say. We need to find the right balance based on what type of user could benefit from solving a problem in that way, because the same problem is perceived and addressed completely different by different people based on the type of problem they're trying to solve, the business case they're addressing, and obviously the skill set and willing to go deeper on that. But it's a broad spectrum, so it's it's more an art than a science of
Yeah, for sure.
being still strongly data driven, but there are many nuances and layers there that we have to keep in mind while building further what I just showed to you right now, which is at seed stage.
Thank you.
All right, I guess anybody have any more questions or comments regarding what we just saw?
I'd be excited to play with it.
And what you were saying, which is it draws in the younger user because it's a different way to look at this product. And I think that's critical. You know, when you, like you said early on, FileMaker Pro got a bad rap, and people need to realize that it isn't just a small little product. It's got a lot of strength to it. People need to understand that it's also, you know, dynamic. It can, a beginning user and a high-end programmer can benefit from that application. And that's key in the whole conversation of selling the application. We learned the hard way. We developed a really nice product through FileMaker Pro, and then someone didn't like it. So they went out and we bought it through CVent. We're now paying upwards of $175,000 for what we were paying probably about $40,000 for. And CVent's product doesn't really deliver what FileMaker was delivering. And you know, it's really, that's the reality is that people need to realize the power of FileMaker.
Yeah, so maybe you can get more customers by making a, you know, your parent company's Apple, use some of their marketing strength, some of their ideas.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. It's marketing the product. Just saying, hey, this product is here and it's strong and it's been around, but it's growing and it's changing.
I mean, okay, so you want to talk? Okay, so what's the most important thing to you? If you, what are the apps that you use the most on the phone? What do you use? Discord. You know, you use that.
What do you mean by that? Like on what?
Well, like if you were to create something, or if FileMaker could, like if you wanted to make a database of your card collection or all your friends or whatever, what do you, you know, I don't mean to put you on the spot, or you either. Well, I did.
He should have said fonts.
Faces.
Oh, yeah, it looks like Eric, you got a question or comment?
Yeah, just thinking about it, I don't know that anybody really emphasized it, but the responsiveness that you're building into this is huge for me as a developer also. Like one of the things I know it's taking away from something that we do as a developer, but honestly, creating 5 different layouts of the same exact thing so it fits on every device gets under the skin. So responsiveness is huge on this for me. I love that.
Yeah, just because something's simplistic doesn't mean it's simple or basic. It's clean. It works well.
Well, it's good. It's content versus structure. Yeah, it goes back to the whole HTML versus CSS question.
Yeah.
All right.
Separate content from structure, and then you can design at will, but it's still based on a back end, and that's a smart way to go.
All right. I guess anyone have anything else for Giuliano or anybody else from Claris? We don't want to hold them hostage because we want them to come back. We don't want to go out here forever.
I just wanted to make a comment that sometimes FileMaker is a hard sell. Even when we were looking at ERPs, I originally was using FileMaker to help me do my job, and then I went to a DevCon, and I really liked the system. I met the Allen Key Systems, and I really liked their system, but it was really hard to sell FileMaker because some people, you know, they didn't. It kind of it has a bad rap as not being a serious business database. I'm just going to be honest with you. So, because then they're like, oh, how come you're not using something based in SQL or, you know, or, and well, of course, SAP, but we didn't have $1 million. But so, things like that. Like FileMaker isn't what people think of for a business. We are a commercial plumbing distributor of parts for hospitals and schools and commercial buildings and such. And we're unique that we are using FileMaker because a lot of people they just kind of thought FileMaker was a joke. But I just wanted you guys to know that we are using it very successfully. We have probably over 55 users now on our system. And I just wanted to just give you a perspective of somebody looking at it from the outside. So
I'd like to add one thing to that. I'm sorry, Brad, did you want to say something?
I'll follow up after you, Stephen. Please.
Okay, thank you. Never forget the power of this platform. From the very first, it's been that way, and it continues to be that way. And it disturbs me and has for many years when people run the product down and claim that it's not serious. I have used it to move cabinet members to the dedication of a presidential library. I've used it to aid an enterprise that helps immigrant parents learn how to move their children through the education system so that they can take advantage of the American dream. I've used it to help an organization that lobbies for effective use of pharmaceutical manufacturing and research. Too many developers in the FileMaker community underestimate the power in their hands. That's not to say that there aren't things that could be improved, that there aren't things that could be changed, and that there aren't things that on some days aggravate me no end when I say, I made it work before, why is it not working now? But the power of the platform, going back to those very early days, is something we should never forget. Now, I don't know who found my soapbox and dragged it out today, but we'll put it back. But Claris, never forget the power that platform has. And I hope that my fingers are crossed, my toes are crossed, my eyes are crossed, the little bit of hair left on my head is crossed, that we get to Nashville and that we get to display this for an entire new generation of FileMaker developers. Enough from me.
Well, there's your new marketing campaign. The I've used more campaign.
Don't wave that flag in front of me. Even as old as I am, I might jump.
Beautifully said, Stephen. I totally agree. And I think we are also seeing attitude shift. Kim, I don't want to discount, the brand perception of FileMaker, the notion of, oh, it could be a toy, it's not serious software. But I do, so I'm not dismissing it. I think attitudes are changing. I think broader IT community fully recognize that there's a scarcity of developers, and hand coding everything, every application, every use case isn't the best. It's not the most powerful, the most efficient approach. What we are doing and need to do a better job of is equipping you as developers out in the community with the talking points to get people, whether it's CIOs or security experts, to understand the significant investments we've made in the power of the software, including the audits, certifications, tests we have in collaboration with Apple, our parent company, that stand behind what we've built and developed and the applications ultimately that you're deploying. So I know we have work to do there, and there are a number of efforts underway. I think I'd set your expectations that more content should be coming to arm you for those conversations, and I like to think it could be distributed through forums like these, which are really useful for us as a way to connect with this, great team of potential evangelists we have, again, to help you solve the problems and get out and execute your work. So we hear it. I think we're doing the right things. My sense is there's a lot of momentum right now, and things are changing to open up opportunities for all of you as developers in coordination with the platform we're developing. So I'm optimistic. For the organizers, thank you so much also for letting us crash your meeting today. It feels great to kind of be in touch and on the early end of what we're deploying and when and how, and your feedback's invaluable. So we really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us. So
Yeah, thanks for your time.
It was a pleasant surprise.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. And Todd, please feel free to share my email address with everyone who's been here today, in case they have follow-up questions, or we want to schedule maybe one-on-one conversation to dive deeper into specific aspect. I'm more than happy to do that. So no problem in sending around my email address. I'm gonna drop it in the chat right now for those who couldn't write it before. But
yeah, Giuliano, as you're doing that, I'll mention that the Zoom, the 3 dots on the lower right-hand corner lets you save the chat to your desktop. And there's some pretty good links in there. Dare I say I dropped in 1 or 2? Something about fonts?
Yep. But thank you again.
Yeah, a pleasant surprise. Terrific to see you guys out. And maybe we'll see you at one of the other user groups as a surprise guest.
If Todd wants us again.
Well, you're welcome anytime. So I guess I know some of you that are on the West Coast, you're coming up on your 5 o'clock. So we will let you get out if you have to leave early. But I guess anybody have one more thing not related to what's already been discussed?
I've been working with Apple and FileMaker for a long time, and all through the 90s, whenever I said, I'm going to stick with Apple, even though they're clearly going under, they'll be out of business in 5 minutes, which is what everyone told me back then. And I said, I'm just going to stick with it. So rumors that FileMaker might go away, I don't care. I'll keep working with it. They'll go away. That's fine. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah, 30 years.
Yeah.
I've never seen the compact and repair in FileMaker Pro. I've seen it in some other databases.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say one more thing, that although in the beginning of my speech, I probably said that people don't like it. Now everybody loves it, just so you know. They're glad we moved to it. It has so much flexibility. It was a hard sell 7 years ago, but not now. So.
Yeah, I was impressed to see a 60-year-old plumbing salesman sit here with an iPad and spec out a new spigot for our building here.
Yes.
Anybody else have one more thing? I guess, well, in keeping with tradition, I do have one more thing. It's a seasonal joke. So I don't know if
Did your dad warn you?
So does anybody know how a gingerbread man makes his bed?
No.
With cookie sheets.
Where's that time machine?
Todd, that was what's coming to the meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead. I'm going to share my screen so we can do some wrap up stuff here. Few public service announcements. For those of you who've been keeping track, Claris Engage Beyond 2021 has officially concluded. They are going to be announcing the Claris Excellence Awards throughout the month of December, but it's not an official presentation. But then you can watch the recorded sessions. I'll include the link to the Claris website in the follow-up email. And they've also announced save the date for July 12th through 14th for next year for Claris Engage 2022 in Nashville.
Can I jump in with one more thing on that, Todd, since you have me here?
Certainly.
Watch the Claris site and watch email. We'll be going out. I'm not exactly sure when, but within the next probably 4 to 6 weeks with the call for proposals for the conference. So please keep your eyes open for that.
All right.
Are you having an in-person thing this year?
Yes,
That's the plan. Date is up in July.
Cool. Thank you, Rosemary. Second announcement, which I think may have been just after our last get together, or within the last few weeks anyway, is that FileMaker 19.4 is now available if you haven't already seen the Do You Want to Update. So a couple of things that this supports installation on Mac OS Monterey. It introduces a set session identifier script step and a companion get session identifier calculation function. And you can see the release notes for all of the details on that. Cross is going to do another one of our lunch and learns here in December. So Todd Talks Validation. So if you want to hear about that, you can tune in on December 15th around noon.
So you're officially running Todd Talks now?
Yes. I haven't trademarked it because I figured TED Talk might have something to say, but I'm going to keep calling them Todd Talks. So, and then we're on LinkedIn and Slack if you want to join there. We had a survey last month. We talked about FileMaker Web Direct, which is ironic that we got to see kind of what's next. But we had talked about FileMaker Web Direct, and we had asked what have been the best improvements since the original release that have been added to the platform since then. You can see the results there. But the biggest ones were the PDF printing and support for save as PDF, as well as support for card windows. So since FileMaker's on the phone, or Claris, excuse me, thank you, Claris, for that.
Hard ones, yes.
And then we asked about external Sql sources, what all of you integrated a FileMaker solution with. A few in there, but the big winners were Microsoft SQL Server and MySQL, which is probably no surprise to anyone. And then the final question that we asked was, imagine if you were a classic board game, which one would you be? FileMaker developers were kind of all over. I guess this probably goes into design that more identified with Pictionary than any other. So there you go. Important dates, because of our winter break, we will not be meeting in January. So our next meeting will actually be on February 2nd, Groundhog Day. Again, we already talked.
Repeat that for
a
while.
I may.
We'll revisit that again.
Claris Engage 2022, we kind of already touched on that for next year. And the other important date to remember is that Spider-Man No Way Home is out in theaters on December 17th. So,
and I bet you the ticket sales.
All right. Our next topic I had to be announced and everything, but I think we're just going to do a repeat of this meeting. So Thomas and Eric, you're up in February. So,
all right.
Sounds good.
So yeah, I think that is all. Well, there would be a survey that will go out. So be on the lookout for that. It'll probably go out maybe not till Friday because I have to create the survey. So give me a minute. And then does anybody else have one more thing that they thought of before we sign off here tonight? All right. Well, I guess again.